everybody, and welcome to Be in the Know, Table Games and More. And tonight I'm very excited to have as a guest Zachary Levine. And Zachary's the vice president of all table game statistical type stuff, right? And strategies for the MGM Resorts International. So Zach, is 15 properties in the United States. Is that correct?
Yeah, so we're up to 16 now. Cosmopolitan of Las Vegas became our 16th with table games, so it's a lot to keep track of. 10 here on the Strip, and then 6 more elsewhere in the country that have table games, plus a couple that don't. But yeah, it's a portfolio that gives a lot of options.
Well, welcome to Be in the Know.
Thank you.
I did a very, very short, brief stint with the MGM Resorts when they bought Prima Donna Resorts, which give them the property of New York, in partnership with Gary Prim. And that was my brief moment in time with MGM. But I can say we worked together at one time or another, right? So tell me, I ask the same question every time I have a guest on. Tell me how you ended up in the table games field. I know you had a degree from MIT, and then you went into the baseball field. So how's a guy like you end up in table games?
Yeah, it's to me it's all math, and that's kind of where the story starts. I was a math major in college. Went to school at the University of Pennsylvania, so in your new neighborhood, and then had a job as a baseball writer where I wrote a blog for the Houston Chronicle about sports statistics, and then later covered the Astros, both covering their minor league system and then the major league team for a few years, where I would write. I would say, I was a pretty typical beat writer, but probably more than average, kind of focused on statistics. It was in the late decade of the 2000s and early 2010s. So it was at the point where, a lot of the statistics in sports wasn't new, but it was really something that fans kind of were able to follow and know about for the same time. Some of the big statistical publications on the internet had been coming out, popularized by I guess maybe just book at that time, Moneyball, had been popular. So, there was a real desire on the part of the newspaper to start speaking that language. And with my having a math degree, it was a good fit for that. Wrote for a couple of years for Baseball Prospectus, a publication that really specialized in the statistical side of the game. And while I was doing that, I was also in school, as you said, at MIT, getting a business degree. And realized pretty quickly as I looked for places to take my career to a place with probably some more decision making and more actively being involved in business strategy, that where there's not a better place to have math be one of the primary tools that you use than in the casino business. I think anyone who's taken a statistics class has had examples in statistics of what's the probability of picking 2 cards or the probability of rolling a die or things like that. So the casino industry was a really great fit. I interned for MGM in 2014 in kind of a brand new department on the corporate side dedicated to casinos. Really one of our first attempts at having this large company that grew a lot by acquisition start having kind of a company-wide strategy in table games and slots. And then 7 years ago today, the day we're recording, moved to Las Vegas full-time, joined the company in July of 2015, and have been in various roles in table games analytics and now table game strategy ever since.
So you joined MGM, and I guess they had decided, hey, you know what, this analytics works. It's just a stone math problem when it comes down to it, right? This X equals Y equals Z, and that's how it goes. And we found that out in the sports industry, right? It's a known fact now. We go on 4th down. We didn't do that in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s.
Yep.
and that kind of math can work for anything, and especially in the casino business, which is all math, right? I mean, my good friend Mike Shackelford, the Wizard of Oz, you guys, you guys are so smart. It drives me nuts. I hate people who are smart than me, so I apologize for hating you. But anyway, that's beside the point. You guys are so into it, and you know so much math. But it is. It's all. This means that. And when I've been in doing this so long, there's outcomes that I can tell you what's going to happen before it happens. You get what I'm saying? But I know that through experience. But you guys know it through the math. It's just bound to happen. The house advantage is going to win out throughout. You can say a guy has luck, but he will not have luck in the long run. So you guys take a statistical approach. So give me an idea of what you guys look for when you're doing the strategy for 15 properties.
Yeah, sure. So, I think from an analytics standpoint, we're really looking at trends in demand. I would say our analytics team focuses more on the bigger picture product and offering. We get involved in individual customers for sure, as somebody luckier than any person can ever be, and we work with surveillance on that kind of stuff. But it tends to be more business strategy when it comes to what are our trends in demand? What does that mean for what our spread should be, what our table limits should be, what our open hours various times of the week should be, both as a general rule, and then trying to predict for special events, working with the properties on the South Strip like Mandalay Bay and Luxor, which are right across from Allegiant Stadium, on what does a Raider game day look like? When we really had nothing to go on in the beginning, we didn't know, would crowds start showing up at 6 a.m., at 10 a.m.? Not at all. Would this be a group that gambles, that doesn't gamble? And so we're looking at, what is the data telling us? And then how do we kind of turn that into both something that's going to lead to a good customer experience with making sure there's the right number of tables open for what customers want to play. And then also obviously for the benefit of the company, what's profitable for a large publicly traded company like ours. So, we're looking at, data really falls into three main areas, right? We have our hourly data, our, head counts, our table minimums. We have our session level data, everything that's generated by the player ratings that can be then aggregated into individual customers' lifetimes, or, can be looked at, split out by game type, by time of day, things like that. And then we have our daily financials. We have our our very traditional metrics, our win and drop and hold. And a lot of what we have to do is try to understand what's valuable there and what's really not. I think that's a big part of analytics too, is what metrics have been used that maybe don't tell either the story or in most cases the whole story.
Well, I think as table games operators for the longest time, and then in my era, since I've been, we just open the door and what happens, right? We know New Year's Eve is going to be busy, but we never got so granular to get into now since the advent of like visual limits and being able to track trends that way. Like I would, when I worked at Cincinnati, I would look at the acts, right? So let's say we had the four tops, right? When they broke, what was that trend? Did we get a push? Did we get the increased volume we thought, or we got nothing from them? So we could plan the next time they played exactly what we're not going to get no table play. It's all going to be on the slots or vice versa, and same thing with sports teams. Like when the Cubs were in town with the Cincinnati Reds, we blew up, right? And then there was other teams that didn't make a dent at all, but we could track those trends through historical data and be able to prepare for the next time. We always knew when the Cubs were in town, we had to spread, right? We knew that. And these things can make such a huge difference in the performance, the overall performance of a property. And, whoever isn't on the bandwagon now, they're going to have to be to compete. Don't you think?
Yeah, and you make such a great point about things that maybe you weren't using visual limits, maybe you weren't, having, a million simulators open or anything like that. But a lot of what we're doing in analytics isn't trying to disprove what we've always done. It's trying to supplement it, and that's what the thing I love about my job at MGM is I'm working with a lot of people who are our leaders at the properties, who are leaders in corporate, who have that experience and who just know these things. And our job is to give them even more tools to say, yeah, we know it's going to be busier. Let's dial it in even farther. And it's not to say, how do these work in opposition to each other? It's how do they work in conjunction with each other so that we can really prove what we've always kind of known and really put either a dollar amount on it, an exact count, an exact optimization on it, or something like that. And that's true in baseball too. One of the things you quickly learn about baseball is that the best run organizations are the ones that can incorporate, whether it's traditional scouting, whether it's traditional coaching analysis, with the statistical side, not where you bring in the stat people and have them, run all over everything.
So we see when we were at the Table Games Conference, and I know you spoke out there, we've seen a lot of AI, right? A lot of new products that are on the horizon. What excites you that you've seen out there?
Yeah, so I think we're intrigued by technologies that are going to become their own data sources. We're always looking for more data, and I think that's true in every industry, whether it's about performance or about your customers. Anyone watching this from any industry is going to always be excited and hungry for more data sources. So what you're seeing now is you have your optical, your RFID. Those I don't think of, they're not analysis tools, they are producers of data. And I think that's the area that we're probably most excited about. And I guess maybe I speak from a little bit of a different spot than some, because we have a built-out analytics team. I know there are lots of one-off casinos or smaller operators that might not have the luxury of having a team of a director of analytics and 3 analysts kind of on our team, plus a slot analytics team and all of that. We're excited for more data that we can dive into and analyze. So it's tools that can tell us what is our exact side bet participation, what is our true average bets for accuracy of ratings. So those are out there. We've seen companies have varying degrees of success trying those out. There've been competitors of ours that have rolled out things that we're kind of watching, but I think the industry is definitely headed that way, and our team is certainly doing evaluations on all those kind of products, working with not only our IT team, but with kind of the properties who would be the users of this, of what more information are you looking for from our analytics team.
Well, I got to give MGM kudos in one area. A lot of big operations just think that, okay, if this works in Las Vegas, it's got to work in Indiana, or it's got to work in Boston, or it's got to work in Florida or whatever. And they'll take a side bet or something like and throw it in, and it'll fail miserably, right?
Yeah.
But MGM seems to do very good market research, and they don't get crazy with changing a lot of things when they go into a new jurisdiction, and they kind of really research the market. So I got to give you a lot of credit for that, because I have seen some of your competitors that just bring their baggage from Las Vegas and set it down and think they've failed miserably in local markets, because local markets tend to be very, very regional, right? There's a bet in Michigan called, I think it's Perfect Pairs or whatever.
Yep,
it's like it doesn't do well anywhere else in the United States except Michigan. But when I was corporate vice president for Jack, if I would have pulled that game out of Greektown and just thrown what I thought, was a great 21+3 or whatever it was, I would have failed miserably. You guys would have grabbed even more market share than you already do up there, But I didn't do that, because I did my research of my competitors. But a lot of people don't do that. They just think it's cookie cutter, and it's really, and I'm sure you're very well. So what? Give me some piece of analysis or something that really surprised you since you've been leading this whole strategic plan for MGM. Is there anything that surprised you? Like, God, I didn't really think that would work, or something like that.
Yeah, so I think the I think the one that we expected, we kind of stuck our toes in without knowing exactly where it would go, is the 000 roulette, the MGM roulette game. It's something that has really, we expected it to be kind of our lower cost option, and be an alternative for people who were probably more concerned with the price on the limit sign than the true pricing of the game of bet times house edge. And what we found is that there's certainly a willingness on the part of the customers to play it, either because of the atmosphere or just where the game is placed. Some of those have been in premium positions. That game has done more we knew it would do well from a hold perspective. It's done more from a volume perspective than we certainly expected. Another one, and you talk about the differentiation among markets. We actually thought we were getting into a spot where maybe we didn't exactly read this right with crapless craps. So exactly what you were saying about not just taking Vegas things and taking them to our regional properties. We had a game, crapless craps, very popular in Mississippi, as we know it is all around the South. You go to our competitors on the Gulf Coast, New Orleans, Biloxi, everywhere you see this game. We know that the Stratosphere in Vegas had it, but there wasn't much else. And so we brought it to Las Vegas. We started out with a couple properties and just said, let's see how this goes. Very successful. And now I think you would see it on pretty much all of our floors in Vegas. And, I think when we started, it was, well, is this just going to be another 6-5 or another 000 roulette or something that's just going to juice the house advantage? But one of the things that we saw is we had requests for this game, because it's not just a takeaway from the customer. There are things about crapless craps that players really like. They like the odds on the points, kind of, the 2s, 3s, the 12s, the things that are going to pay significantly on the odds and are going to allow you to really make your session on some of those bets. And one of the things we found is that the game has really caught on in Las Vegas, to the point where at first we said, never open this as your first game. If we have a game, we always want it to be regular craps, but the crapless games are so popular, and we're getting requests for it in high limit. We're getting requests for, hey, can I reserve a game? If you go down to the MGM Grand, you'll often see a reserve game of crapless. And so, that was one that, we didn't expect. And maybe it's not the most, it didn't take the most advanced analytics ever to find this out, but just something that surprised me in our work that we've done as a team.
Yeah, so when I went to Cincinnati, we had a big player who always went to Indiana to play crapless craps. And I said, well, if you could get crapless craps here, he'd come here and we'd get more time, because he's only spending like 14 hours a month at our property. And we got crapless craps passed through the Ohio, Gaming Control Board, and started it up. And his play immediately moved to like double, so it's like 28 hours. Yep. And then we added. He wanted bonus craps, but Galaxy wasn't licensed at the time, and I came up with a side bet that was very similar to bonus craps, and me and the Wizard put it on, and so he was happy with that. And so now his time went to it was crazy, like 54 hours a month, and to the point we made him his own little room in high limit with this game. And he was a very, very 7-figure player who loved it. And then we started getting requests on the floor, and by the time half our games are crapless craps, and it just continued and continued and continued. And it was very big in Detroit. We had a lot of play in crapless craps there. So yeah, I would love that. That's the one thing. It takes so long to get anything approved here in Pennsylvania, but I think crapless craps would really catch on here. And it's another one. And the thing is about crapless craps, yeah, it's got that big 5.24 whatever pass line house advantage. But the minute you start throwing odds,
Right.
that house advantage diminishes rapidly, and it becomes a fairly good game for the high limit player if they're taking full odds and going. So yeah, I
It's
think
a real
it's
gambler's game. The
yeah.
swings are significant.
I think in Las Vegas though overall people are oblivious to house advantages. And I'll never forget going to the Cosmo, your new property, and I sat down on free bet blackjack, and it was a $50 game, and I bought in and I bet 100. I hit a blackjack right off the bat, and the person pays me 120. I'm like, whoa, you're making a mistake here. And they showed me this little bitty tiny print. It was so small. I need a big giant magnifying glass to see it. And it said it paid 6-5. And I'm thinking, oh my God. I mean, how much do you want? And people were, I was at a $50 table with four other people. So, I mean, it wasn't like, but they're just oblivious, totally oblivious to house advantage and like triple zeros. No big deal. Heck, you guys got extra zero, big deal. Let's play. But now when you get into the regional markets, these people are, man, it's like you're stealing the baby's candy. If you put a 6-5, you got to be very careful about how much tolerance there is for bad bets, right? When you get into regionals.
Yep, and that goes exactly to your point before. If you were to look at the 3-2 versus 6-5 breakdown, 00 versus 000 breakdown in Vegas versus our, I'll call them, and I won't say Vegas versus regional, but it's more destination properties versus locals properties. The people, number one, I think you just feel the house advantage more because your trip is more frequent. The average person comes to Vegas once a year. The average person might go to MGM Grand Detroit once a week. It's the equivalent of their Thursday night bowling league or whatever it is. That's their activity. So you certainly feel it more, and also you the game better. And that's not to say, that in Vegas we're, not looking for. We're always looking for ways to say yes to the customer to make it a better experience. We'll try to find ways to give a little bit back, but the customer preference and what the customer kind of notices and cares about is going to be certainly different in all of those markets.
Well, an argument I make all the time with some of my leaders, and sometimes I win, sometimes I lose, is there's a value gamer. They don't care what the house advantage is, as long as it's got the lowest limit price on it. That's where they're going to find themselves, right? They're just right. A value price gamer. And I had this, all of these surveys were crazy in Ohio. They always, why can't you have a $5 game? Why can't you have well, we can't afford to have a $5 game. You do the math. We're upside down at a $5 game. So I said, I'm going to try to write the regs so I can mandate a side bet. So I did that. So we had a $5 game with a $5 side bet, and everybody said, well, this isn't going to fly. It's just not going. I said, okay, if it don't fly, it don't fly. I'm going to put one unit on. I had people 3 deep on a Saturday night. The first weekend we had it, and before it was all done, I had 7 units of the 5-5 game. So now I'm going to take it to Greektown, and they got the same response. It'll never, ever happen here. It won't work. And it's same exact phenomenon had. In fact, once we reopened from the pandemic, they were running that game at 10-5, and 15-5 because they had such volumes after they reopened. And nobody could care less that they were, mandated to a side bet. So there's value price gamers that just do not care.
Absolutely. A $25 3-2 game at whatever 0.6% house advantage, you're losing less per hand than a $10 6-5 game. But if I come to the table with $100, you can tell me that all you want. I can be the best mathematician in the world. I can know that one of them is a just 15 cents per hand versus 20 cents per hand in theoretical, whatever it is. If I have $100 in my pocket, I might have a pretty bad time on a $25 game. I could be out in I could be out in one hand on a $25 game. There's definitely, we definitely have to have options to cater to the customer who is sensitive to the price on the sign, and options for people who are sensitive to the price, the true price they're paying, that house edge times the minimum. And I think the attitude of the whole industry is, like every other industry, people pay for the premium product.
So we're moving into a time that we're moving out of that situation where the government's supplemental money is kind of running out, and inflation's starting to dig in. What's your thoughts on what the next 6 months look like for the gaming industry? You think we'll still maintain where we're at, or are we going to see a little bit of softening in the market?
Yeah, so far, at least from a Las Vegas perspective, we haven't really noticed much. I think Las Vegas is in an interesting spot because it can be somebody's extravagant expense, or it can be the thing that if you aren't going to do your extravagant expense, trip to South America, and you live in Los Angeles, it can be your fallback option. It can be, hey, I'm not going to do this crazy thing this year. Let me just go to Vegas for a weekend to get out. So I think we exist kind of in both places on that spectrum of luxury goods, and so far we haven't seen it. Obviously inflation is something that we have our eyes on. I think from a table games perspective, a lot of the changes in minimum bets have already kind of happened. I don't know how much farther there is to go. If you were to walk the floors in Vegas today compared to 2019, it's unquestionably more expensive to gamble now. We've coming out of the pandemic, we had people where their whole trip budget was table games or table games and slots, just because the nightclubs weren't open, the shows weren't open, the restaurants weren't that great of an experience. And so you'll see, and this isn't an MGM thing, it's citywide, it's just more expensive to play table games. So if you ask me, honestly, I'm not sure that even in a time of, high single-digit percent inflation, there's that much higher to go. I don't think you're going to notice that many more big changes, but it's certainly something we have our eyes on when it comes to what else is eating up our customers' budgets, and where does Las Vegas exist in the bigger picture of our customer spending habits.
So what about ETGs, Zachary? I mean, during the reopening of from the pandemic, there was a lot of thought that ETGs were going to take over. I mean, people felt a little bit more comfortable, being on a unit with, at that time they had plexiglass up, and maybe we were heading in that direction. How do you see they're definitely on a roll.
Yes.
But what do you see as the future of the ETGs as far as table games?
Yeah, and I think the product is getting better too. I think the generation of product that we're in now, the graphics are really slick. The experience is better than when it started. It has definitely taken over from a very low limit perspective. And some of that is by necessity. What I just talked about supply constraints and having fewer seats on our games. It made it so that table games pricing went up, and your $5, in some cases your $10, depending on the property, option became these electronic games. And I think that's how maybe that's Las Vegas catching up to the rest of the world. I think if you went to Macau, and some of it, what went on in Asia was just because of caps on the number of games that you could have under your licensing. But we've seen this in other parts of the world too, where this has just kind of become the lower end table games option from a minimums perspective. And so what we have to do is, because I'm right there with you, a $5 game is just not going to be profitable, and it's not how we want to price our entertainment when it comes to what should the price of an hour's worth of blackjack plus 2 beers or whatever it is be. It's just a lot easier calculation on the ETGs, and so what we have to do is make that experience, as good as it can be for those customers, whether it's through live dealers who are entertaining, or an automated game that gives you great game speed, and you're not waiting for the guy next to you to buy in, or a drink got spilled, or there's a dispute, or something like that. It's just a player experience that you can kind of make your own. And what we've seen is it's a little bit of a new demographic to us. We did a lot of analysis of, all right, is it a slot player who we're taking, or is it a table games player? And it's kind of in between. There's kind of some new customers who, we hadn't seen play to this level. It's younger. It's more female. It's a higher percentage women on the ETGs than what we get in traditional table games, and those are good things. Now, I'm a table games person. I never want to see that live experience go away. I'd be really sad if this took over. But I think there's a place for both in properties like ours that have that have a customer base that will include both types of customers.
So what excites me about ETGs is the ability. So you got your penny slot that people just they have no idea how they win or whatever. And an ETG, you could put 14 side bets on it if you want to, because the dealer don't have to think about the payoffs. The machine's paying off. So that kind of gives you, although you got a $5 game, and maybe even if it's 3-2, if a guy's, with your statistics that 33% of the time they're betting a side bet, exactly where you're going to end up, right? It's going to be a profitable situation for you. So let me ask you one last question on ETGs. Do you guys do a lot of statistical research on, like, okay, if you make an install of the ETG, on if there's any cannibalization of your regular table product?
Yeah, and there definitely is. We think most of that is cannibalization that we kind of forced upon ourselves because it was simultaneous with limits going up in general across the industry. So it has, but I think a lot of it is we've just reopened that game to our lower limit players. So we do see that. And to your point, I think your point about the side bets is a great one. Number one, you can add them because the dealer doesn't have to pay them out. It doesn't slow the game down. But number two, you can also measure them. It's our best chance to get really good data on side bet participation without installing expensive optical tracking or things that we're going to have our surveillance team sit and watch or anything like that. It's a great opportunity. Now, it doesn't necessarily translate to a live game just because of what I mentioned about it's a different demographic of customers and everything. But I also think, and I think when the table game show that you and I were at, I walked around the show, and it's not just side bets. There are whole game types that I think, this might not work. It might be a little slow on a live table, but put it on an ETG, have it either be a standalone or an option on a stadium with multiple game types. It opens the door to a whole bunch of inventors and new game creators to do something where, there's some reason that game wouldn't have worked on the floor, but now having that stadium or having online, like what we do through BetMGM or all of that, it opens all new opportunities for some of these game designers.
Right. And I mean, that's what I was telling most of them guys out there. I said, no, your opportunities lie on the online gaming and the ETGs. I said, the world, your imagination, there's no end to what you could come up with. And you guys are very bright, and this is your opportunity. And I'm very excited about that part of the business. I think that will just continue to evolve over the next decade. And I'm really interested to see where it goes. So What else? Anything else that you can tell our guests that might give them a little insight on what's coming down the line that besides artificial intelligence? Anything else you're looking at?
Yeah, so a lot of it's the recognition software. A lot of it, a lot of what we're doing is honestly trying to get our systems to talk to each other, new properties, you know, table games integrations there. Um, from a game standpoint, I think it has been a very slow period, and I think you've probably noticed this regionally as well. I think, and correct me if you see it differently, I think it's been a very slow period for adoption of new games. I think some of that is, um, when we had a crowd coming in after the pandemic, it tended to be a lot of people whose trip used to consist of non-gaming things, and they would come to Las Vegas or they would come to their local casino because that's the entertainment that was open in your city, and they wanted to play the games they knew and were easy. So and every we're under staffing shortages. Every table is precious real estate, so what I think we are about to start opening ourselves up to a better period for new games, and not just new games. I think new technologies on the games, different ways of consuming the side bets. I think what AGS has done with the bonus spin extreme has been really smart from a technology perspective, saying, you know, especially with a game like roulette, where there's just a limit to the events that can happen in roulette, but you throw a random number generator on that game, and that can be something different. So just different technologies and ways of consuming wagers and side bets, and I think the ETGs and online is only going to accelerate that.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. We got into a very stagnant period after the reopening after the pandemic. Pre-pandemic, table games was on such a roll. Your property, MGM National Harbor, was doing more in table games than what they were doing in
Yep.
slots, and that forced other people to think about their new openings, whether they should take slot areas out and add more table games. And I think that's a product. I'll stick with this as long as I live. That we were people that were so connected, right? I mean, you go to work, you got two. I got two phones sitting there. I got two screens. I mean, it's just crazy how connected you are to devices, right? So when you go out into for some entertainment, and you got a little bit of extra money, you want to maybe break away from that and have some community with people. And table games provided that. And table games was really on a big roll. Then boom, a pandemic hits where nobody wants to sit next to nobody, and things changes. And a lot of these game developers who were, you go back to the table games conference in 18 and 19, they were really coming up with some unique concepts, and they got slapped in the face because, like you said, real estate became very, very tight, and you're not going to put a burn 21 or whatever, something
There's
new.
just less of an appetite to try things that are new.
You're not
Yeah.
going to, but I think that appetite's coming back,
Yep.
and in a hurry, because people are getting a little burnout on the standards, and I think you're going to see some new things on the horizon. Well, Zachary, I want to really, really thank you so much for taking the time to be in the know. A lot of great insight tonight. And any last words for our viewers out there?
I don't think so. I always enjoy the conversation, and I think as far as analytics is concerned, just to wrap on that, it's we love asking questions, and one of the things that we're really focused on is how do we understand our customers better, understand performance of our games better, and I think if even if you are at a place that's not an analytics powerhouse, if you don't have an analytics team assembled, asking questions is the it's kind of the root of everything. So there are tools out there to find those answers. So I guess to the operators, don't be discouraged by oh, I'm not MGM with 16 properties and directors of analytics and all that. Just it's something that everybody can can try to take advantage of. So, let it be your friend.
Yeah, I gotta agree with you. You don't have to have a staff of 20 people going through data all the time. Just keep your mind open and look and listen. Look and listen. It's out there, and like I said, there was a lot of times in my life that I just knew what was going to happen. It's just through experience. But that was from viewing. That was from paying attention to what was going on. So Zachary, thanks you so much for being on Be in the Know, and I'm sure I'm going to see you out at G2E, and we'll get together and we'll talk some more new games when we get out there.
Absolutely, these are the kind of conversations that are just my regular everyday conversations. So it felt like this was fun.
All right, well, thank you so much, and folks, you're going to see a little subscribe button in the corner. You really help out the channel if you subscribe, and just remember, if you want to know anything about table games, you got to be in the know. See you next time.